I know that a lot of people want to know why I decided to come back to the US to have my baby, why I didn't want to give birth in Gambia. It's been very difficult for me to get into the details about the healthcare there in Gambia, especially because I know that it's a sensitive topic, and a lot of people are not, especially if you have not been to any part of Africa, you're not going to understand. Being here in the US right now, it's especially difficult for me to touch on those topics, because I don't want it to seem like, oh, now that she's in the US, she wants to talk bad about Gambia. It's not that I want to talk bad about Gambia. So it's not like it's not like I'm taking any opportunity to bash Gambia. I love Gambia. I have made all of these video series about how I feel about Gambia, but I know there will still be those few people that will be highly offended, about what I have to say in this video about the healthcare. But I promise you guys I would deliver this video, so I'm going to try my best to keep it basic and just really quickly go over some of the things about the infrastructure with the healthcare in Gambia that made it uncomfortable for me to have my baby there. So whenever I first became pregnant, I actually did have intentions of having my baby in Gambia. I started getting prenatal care there in Gambia, and I actually ended up visiting 4 different clinics because I couldn't find a place that I was comfortable with. So the healthcare there in Gambia is not being practiced by the most recent standard best practices of care. Like, for example, me, I'm high risk. Because this was my 9th baby. So I had a high risk pregnancy, and the delivery would be considered to be high risk. So let me just give you an example. When I go in to deliver a baby, they have an IV in both arms. They're anticipating, because like I'm high risk for bleeding, and I'm high risk for hemorrhaging. They're prepared to do a blood transfusion. They're prepared to give emergency meds. They have 2 IVs open. So that's a protocol. That's for the hospital. In Gambia, that wouldn't be the case. Like, a lot of actions are not taken to prevent the emergency. It's like with the healthcare there, like they wait till the emergency arises, and then they try to catch up with that. And a lot of women die. A lot of women have hemorrhages. A lot of women have hypertensive disorders. So I didn't really want to get into really, really personal aspects of like my pregnancy and different complications. But alhamdulillah, I had, for the most part, a very healthy pregnancy. The last month, I developed, which they thought was going to be preeclampsia. So I was being monitored for that. Labs were continuously being taken when I was in the hospital for that. For sure, had I been in Gambia and had my baby in Gambia, that wouldn't have been the case. I wouldn't have been on certain precautions. I wouldn't have been closely monitored. And it's just because of the way that the healthcare is set up there. I don't want to sit here and make a video about all of the negative aspects about the healthcare, but I can be honest and just say that I didn't feel like the healthcare would be safe. Another thing is that blood is not always available in the event that an emergency happens and a blood transfusion is needed. Other issues you could run into with the healthcare in Gambia is availability of equipment. A lot of times they actually only have one piece of equipment available. If that piece of equipment is in use or is broken or not working, then the patient just has to suffer by not being able to get the procedure done. The pharmacies there often run out of medication, and there's not always an overstock for medication. A lot of times it can be very difficult to find medications that you're looking for in Gambia. Even in the hospitals, sometimes they run out of medication, and they're not, of course, in the event of an emergency, that would be a really serious problem. But even outside of emergencies, a lot of times you're not able to get medications that you need there. I personally know someone that needed a life or death procedure done in Gambia. The equipment was not working, so they were told to come back within 1 week's time, but unfortunately that person passed away waiting. And another thing is, like, with my experience with the healthcare there in Gambia, everything you do is pay as you go. You have to make payment. If you need a lab being drawn, you have to make payment for the lab before the lab is drawn. If you need a procedure to be done, you have to make the payment. You have to pay for that procedure before the procedure is being done. So nobody wants to be like laying in the bed, just under all this stress, barely able to focus or think right, and you have someone coming to you asking for payment for a procedure. You can't even judge whether you really need this procedure, whether you even want the procedure. So it's just like not having that like that whole patient advocacy that they have, that I'm used to, you know, being from the US and being used to the medical care in the US. You know, they don't have that there. I remember when my child was hospitalized, every single move they had to make in the hospital for her care, everything had to be paid up front. So you don't have like the health insurance and all that stuff. It's out of pocket, it's up front, and it can be a hassle, especially if an emergency arises. A lot of the events that end up being fatalities there in Gambia were women waiting, sitting and waiting, procedures needing to be paid for. There were so many things that had to be done while I was in labor, for them to be able to provide the best care possible. And then you worry about that bill, and you're able to worry about that afterwards. So that's another thing to take into consideration. I had a very difficult time building trust, and having certain level of trust with the staff there and I have a difficult time building trust with the staffs there in the clinics and hospitals, is because they're not friendly. And that may seem like a more minor thing, but yeah, like they'll frown at you, or they'll be more aggressive. You'll ask for something or request something, and they will literally argue with you. It's just like that gentle part of the care is not there, you know. So it's very difficult for you to lay down on a table and trust somebody that you feel like is mean, or they're not being kind, or they're not showing you, they're not like having the appropriate empathy, or, you know, for you. And I know that's not me, and that's not like a personal opinion, because you'll hear everyone say that, especially if they're actually like from locals also, but especially like if they're people that are from other parts of the world, experiencing healthcare there in Gambia. They will say that, like, the healthcare professionals, they're not trained to have like that. They're not trained to have that kind, gentle aspect of providing care.
A lot of the facilities in Gambia are still using paper charting. Even the private hospitals, instead of having an electronic system, they have not switched over to the electronic system.
My doctor, all the way up until me leaving and coming here to the US, my doctor a couple of times got me mixed up with another patient. Was providing medication for me that was not for me. It was for another patient. Feeling like I had to like micromanage the staff, you know. And if you're not paying attention, or if you don't have if you're not paying attention, or if you just don't have the education or the knowledge of certain things, then you don't ask questions. Some people are intimidated. They don't want to even ask questions. They don't want to ask the physician questions. They don't have the confidence to do that. But yeah, so I'm like, I would catch mistakes. I would catch errors from the doctors. And these are not even African. If you're thinking, oh, they're Gambian. No, I'm talking about doctors that have had Western training. I'm talking about physicians from Spain, physicians from other parts of the world, not just Africa or Gambia. Like, the physicians I had issues with were not Gambian or African doctors. My doctor mixed me up with another patient. She was providing medication for me that was for another patient. When I was getting my record to bring with me here to the US, she had me mixed up with another patient. She was writing down a diagnosis for me that was not in fact for me. So like, catching things like that, I was just thinking like, I never regretted my decision to come here and have my baby, you know, because of those things. All the way, like I said, all the way up until me actually leaving. I'm just like, what if I'm laying there, you know, all vulnerable, I can't, no strength, drained out, having a baby, and the doctor physician has me mixed up with another patient? There could be medication errors. There could just be so many things that could lead to death. And I know like what's written for you is written for you anyway, but I alhamdulillah was blessed with another option. So I just felt safer with taking the other option. There were also circumstantial things about the situation that were unique to just our personal journey and living in Gambia. With living in Gambia. So my husband's work is in America, it's in the US, and he basically had just left Gambia in June. So if he was able to come to Gambia, he more than likely would not have been able to stay as long as we would have wanted to. So that was also something that I had to take into consideration after having a rather stressful pregnancy. And I really only seen my husband, I want to say, like 4 months out of the pregnancy. 4 months was the maximum amount of time. It could have not even really been a full 4 months, you know, that he was there in Gambia. And that time was like broken up of two visits, like him traveling to the US and coming back to Gambia. But anyway, so for me to be able to have the support that I needed, like, and for me to not have to worry about him having to leave before I was like mentally or emotionally ready, for him. Had I had the baby in Gambia, chances are that he would have had to leave before we were really ready, in order to be able to get back to the US and take care of everything that he needed to do, like business wise. Yeah, and it was very, very stressful, like going through most of the pregnancy, without having my husband there. So when it was time to deliver and have the baby, I just mentally couldn't take anymore. I felt like I was at a breaking point and I didn't need to put myself through any more than what I had already been through. I couldn't stand the idea of having a super stressful labor and delivery and an unfamiliar environment, like the new healthcare system and everything, things that I just was not used to. I wanted to be able to thoroughly enjoy my labor and delivery and my birthing and everything. And alhamdulillah, I was really able to, like, I feel like my big boy, you don't like the camera like Selwa used to. Alhamdulillah, I'm just very, very grateful. Like, I don't know of anything else that I could have asked for with my whole birthing experience. The hospital, everyone was great. Yeah, so that's just, those are the reasons. Those are some of the reasons. So it wasn't just a medical healthcare. It wasn't just the healthcare in Gambia. It was also, like I said, the circumstantial things about my husband traveling and needing the support. Overall, it was just a thing that worked out best for our family. So that's why
I had to take a little break and breastfeed him. But so I wanted to let you guys know that there are definitely things that I wasn't comfortable talking about in this video, which is why I've written a book about our journey of life here in Gambia. I wanted to share on a deeper level things that I'm not comfortable saying and things that I'm not comfortable talking about on my videos here on YouTube. I decided to compile in a book. I've also taken things from my personal journal and I've put them in the book to be able to share with you guys. So I would really appreciate the support if you guys would go and sign up to receive notification whenever I publish my book about our journey of life here in Gambia.